As part of the League's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Initiative, the League has encouraged the use of land acknowledgements. We were pleased to find that the Landmark has created its own land acknowledgement. We have now asked our friend and local Oneida Nation member, Colleen Binns, to add her own land acknowledgement, which she has done and is ready to state for us. Both acknowledgements are on the back of the program for you to follow. Don't touch it.
Okay. Segu, Swagwag. Hello, everyone. I hope you're feeling good today, and I'm proud to be here and read this acknowledgement to you. But I do want to say I had put a lot of thought into this, and it was really hard to do. So wherever you see these, at least I hope this group will help spread the word that there needs to be action behind these words, because we shouldn't be fighting for some of the things we're fighting for if there was truly equality in this thing we call a democracy in America. My people had the first true democracy, which included women, and the women who fought for our right to vote were actually inspired by the Haudenosaunee women in New York. So I just like to acknowledge that as well. So many Native nations have lived harmoniously with these lands and waters for countless generations before the onslaught of colonization. Like indigenous peoples across the Americas and most of the world, they experienced genocide, ethnic cleaning, theft of their lands and waters, and forced removal. It's why many of us don't know who we are today. And that historical trauma has leaked into this century. I witnessed it all the time as a teacher in the Oneida Nation school system, and any school system I visited as a resident artist. I had complete strange children asking me about the wall during that one administration we had. And I didn't know what to tell them because the walls never worked, and a lot of money was wasted in my eyes on something that doesn't include things. It excludes. It is time to share the history of the great peace that connected the people to each other and all of creation. The roots of the true democracy, which was balanced and included women, began in the homelands of the Haudenosaunee in New York, also known as the Iroquois Confederacy. We ask all to learn the true history of the lands on which we reside and be resolved to work with the indigenous peoples to build a shared sustainable future for all. The Landmark Resort respectfully acknowledges that the land we currently occupy is the homelands, and that's the other thing. I had a really hard time saying whose land this was because we didn't really own it, and we had territories, but it wasn't like you couldn't go there or you needed a passport or you had to pay your way in. Of course, there was protocol, but it wasn't like you couldn't go there. So I've heard it was the homeland to the Potawatomi, the Ho-Chunk is in Red Banks, and the Menominee had actually all of Wisconsin into Illinois and Minnesota at one time. The only difference was we had treaties with each other and we honored them. So many people from many different nations did come to this peninsula, just as we do today, which is what I'm going to say next. The land, okay, let's see here. I lost my spot. The Council of the Three Fires share the 7 grandfather teachings. These include wisdom, love, honesty, humility, bravery, truth, and respect towards each other and all of creation. Go forward from this moment with these ideals in your hearts and minds. And the thing we need to start with first, which I'm sharing from a speaker that I heard at the Unitarian in Ephraim this past weekend, is that we need to start with truth. So listen to the truth wherever you hear it. And thank you for being here today and inviting me to say this. Yawanko.
Thank you very much, Colleen. Now toward our program. Today we welcome Carl Sutter from the American Society of Civil Engineers to speak to us about Wisconsin's infrastructure. Carl has over 40 years' experience in the field, mostly in the public realm of environmental and infrastructure engineering. You can read his many accomplishments, his service and honors on the back page of the program. But right now, we want to hear about the Wisconsin Infrastructure Report Card. Thanks, Carl, for being with us today.
Thank you. I know I've been asked to give a little bit of a presentation on how we got involved with the League of Women Voters. We were discussing it over here a little bit. And first of all, thank you for attending this. I think, you know, obviously on my behalf, I think it's a very important subject. We've had a long relationship with the League of Women Voters. I worked with the League of Women Voters of Wisconsin, and over the past 4 years, we put together many presentations. On this last report card here, the 2020 report card, we did 11 different presentations with the League of Women Voters of Wisconsin. Of course, all these were virtual, but 4 of them covered everything, and then the other 7 actually covered some of the different categories that I'll be going through today. My contact was Carol Diggelman, who was a professor down in Milwaukee area at one of the colleges there, and I said, she's also an ASCE member, in addition to being a League of Women Voters member. So what would happen, actually, is she would put together the programs, and she would contact local experts in each of the different fields that you'll see as we go through it, like aviation and ports and highways and stuff like that. And it was very, very informative. I am going to review this rather quickly. There's a lot of information, and I'll also have a time here, or a spot where I'll tell you where you can get further information if you'd like. I believe it's all posted on the League's website, so you can be able to link to it from there and read the actual report. The actual report is quite lengthy. It's about 110 pages, but if you want to say you are interested in aviation, you could go there, and that's about 6 or 7 pages long. You could read a lot more information on that, because like I said, I'm just going to be skimming it today. There's much too much to go through. Now I gotta get my glasses on that shows I'm an old man, and kind of go from there. One thing that happened, and I think this was provided to you in the little write-up you had, is I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for putting all this together. The League's effort, we as a section won the Advocate of the Year award from our society last year. And most of it was due to the League of Women Voters and what the League and we put together and went out basically into the public. We got a much larger audience than we would normally have, and we're very grateful to you for that. I'll go into some boring ASCE stuff for you. The Wisconsin ASCE strives to educate and inform the public, just like you do. As it states in our mission, part of what we do is serve the public good. Our code of ethics lists that engineers, first and foremost, protect the health, safety, and welfare of the public. ASCE has assessed the Wisconsin infrastructure, and it earned an overall grade of C, or a mediocre grade, and I'll go into how we came up with that in a minute here. We can do better, and we strive to reach a B grade. Some of our recommendations to increase this grade include increase overall investment across all infrastructure categories to ensure safe, resilient, and reliable systems to maintain and improve the quality of life and economic health for Wisconsin residents. Leadership at all levels must have targeted discussions and build consensus to facilitate necessary updates for outdated infrastructure based on the needs of Wisconsinites. Along with increased investments, efficiencies, and new technologies that can help bridge the gap between smart investment and overall infrastructure needs, encourage new methods of design and construction, and defray costs while providing for a better future for Wisconsin. Project priorities should be set for investment in the state's most outdated and overcapacity infrastructure needs. And please remember, delayed improvement and maintenance results in greater costs in the long run. So this slide depicts the 13 infrastructure categories that we evaluated. And that's what we used to come up with the C grade. As you can see, the grades range from a high of B for energy to a low of D+ for roads and transit. I would like to mention the 2 infrastructure categories do not appear on this list. This is the 2020 list. They are broadband and schools. Both of these are very important. We realize that, but I wanted to provide you with the reasons they weren't addressed in the 2020 report card. Broadband is generally a private enterprise. And at the time that we were preparing the 2020 report card, they were not just sharing sufficient information with us to allow us to evaluate the category with the breadth we strive to use in our evaluation. Since that time, and a lot of it is due to the bipartisan infrastructure law where money is being put into broadband, broadband is currently scheduled to be one of the categories in our 2024 report card, which I certainly hope all of you read. For schools, we didn't have the review expertise available to prepare a thorough analysis. We're working to identify that expertise and intend to have schools, again, as part of the 2024 report card. Our goal is that we will be releasing a report card every 4 years so we can kind of track the progress here. Now this slide shows the grading criteria and scale. It's kind of the old style, which means a guy like me with gray hair understands what's going on here. So each category is graded on capacity. Does the infrastructure's capacity meet current and future needs? Condition. What is the infrastructure's existing and near future physical condition? Funding. What is the current level of funding from all levels of the infrastructure category as compared to the estimated needs? Future need. What is the cost to improve the infrastructure? Will funding prospects address the need? Operation and maintenance. What is the owner's ability to operate and maintain the infrastructure properly? Is the infrastructure in compliance with government regulations? Public safety. To what extent is the public safety jeopardized by the condition of the infrastructure, and what could be the consequence of failure? We were discussing failures before and how, unfortunately, in the engineering world, the failures tend to be very massive and very noteworthy. Resilience. What is the infrastructure system's capability to prevent or protect against significant multi-hazard threats and incidents? How able is it to quickly recover and reconstitute critical services with minimum consequences for public health and safety, the economy, and national security? Innovation. What new and innovative techniques, materials, technologies, and delivery methods are being implemented to improve the infrastructure? The grading scale is as follows. A is exceptional, fit for the future. The infrastructure of the system or network is generally in excellent condition, typically new or recently rehabilitated, and meets capacity needs for the future. A few elements show signs of general deterioration that require attention. Facilities meet modern standards for functionality and are resilient to withstand most disasters and severe weather events. B is good, adequate for now. The infrastructure in the system or network is in good to excellent condition. Some elements show signs of general deterioration that require attention. A few elements exhibit significant deficiencies. Safe and reliable with minimal capacity issues and minimal risk. C is mediocre, requires attention. The infrastructure in the system or network is in fair to good condition. It shows general signs of deterioration and requires attention. Some elements exhibit significant deficiencies in conditions and functionality with increasing vulnerability to risk. D is poor, at risk. The infrastructure is in poor to fair condition and mostly below standard, with many elements reaching the end of their service life. A large portion of the system exhibits significant deterioration. Condition and capacity are of significant concern with strong risk of failure. And F is failing or critical, unfit for the purpose. The infrastructure in the system is in unacceptable condition with widespread advanced signs of deterioration. Many of the components of the system exhibit signs of imminent failure. I would also like to mention that the budget amounts shown here were prepared in 2020, and I'm sure, as everyone is aware, construction costs have increased significantly since that time, so all the budgets presented as part of the report card would be expected to be increased from what I'm showing you today. Now, let's review the individual categories. Aviation. Aviation is an integral part of Wisconsin's transportation system, moving people and goods throughout the state, nation, and world. We have 8 commercial airports and 90 general aviation airports. Recently, commercial airlines transported more than 5.5 million passengers annually to and from Wisconsin. In general, Wisconsin's commercial aviation airports meet or exceed standards. 90% of airport pavement on primary runways and taxiways are rated fair and above. In the most recent 5-year capital improvement plan, Wisconsin's airports have identified a need of $1.13 billion from the years 2019 to 2025. Airport owners need to be able to finance a portion of their projects, find new revenue options, and utilize reliable, robust federal funding to meet future needs. We propose the following to raise the grade in aviation. Prepare updates to economic significance of the aviation industry in Wisconsin every 5 to 7 years. Provide training to reduce runway incidents. Increase federal and state funding to allow for new pavement and maintenance to be reliably scheduled. Investigate the resilience of the Wisconsin aviation system in the wake of more frequent and severe weather events such as flooding and snowstorms. Plan to have the Wisconsin State Airport System Plan completed or updated on a regular basis to ensure that the state and airports stay on top of any necessary changes. Bridges. Wisconsin's 14,275 bridges provide the state with critical infrastructure connecting residents with their jobs, schools, businesses, and places of worship, as well as hospitals and other emergency response services. 7.4% of our bridges are structurally deficient. The national average is actually 7.6%. That means we still have over 1,000 bridges that are structurally deficient. A 2019 report by the American Road and Transportation Builders Association identifies 1,955 bridges that require repair, with an estimated cost of $1.4 billion. Developing policy solutions and alternative project delivery methods, as well as utilizing advanced high-performance materials for bridge construction and repair to assist with cost savings, are all crucial steps. Finally, the state should utilize Wisconsin's asset management system to increase bridge restoration efforts. ASCE proposes the following to raise the grade on bridges. Continue use of advanced materials for bridge rehabilitation and for new bridges. These include high-performance concrete and epoxy-coated and stainless steel reinforcement. Address the short-term funding needs by raising the state motor fuel tax and reinstate indexing to keep pace with inflation. Continue to develop and utilize alternative project delivery methods to achieve cost savings and quicker repairs or replacement of bridges. Continue to study and pilot test mileage-based user fees and toll roads. Dams in Wisconsin provide recreational areas, fish and other wildlife habitat, hydroelectric power, a water source for agricultural operations, navigation, wetland restoration, and flood control. We have approximately 3,900 dams, of which nearly 200 are high-hazard dams, meaning probable loss of life should the dam be breached. The annual budget for dam safety is approximately $750,000, which allows for 6.25 full-time equivalent staff. However, increased resources are needed to ensure public safety and minimize economic impact from possible future dam failures. We propose the following to raise the grade in dams. Educate the public about the location and the safety risk and hazard associated with the dams. Educate government officials on the increased need for maintenance and rehabilitation funding. Provide and increase state and federal funding and staffing for regular dam inspections, state dam safety inspections, and repair and removal grants. And update emergency action plans for all high and significant hazard dams. Drinking water. Wisconsin has more than 11,000 public water systems to serve residents, which is among the largest amount in the nation. More than 80% of these are in areas where people don't remain for long periods, such as campgrounds or gas stations, while 5% serve more than 4 million residents. In general, municipalities and water utilities are encountering several natural and man-made water quality issues and must contend with aging water treatment and distribution systems to serve their communities in the future. Lead, bacteria, nitrates, per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, or PFAS, which I think you've probably heard about, arsenic and radium are some of the water quality concerns that have come to light in recent years. It is estimated that $8.6 billion will be needed to address infrastructure deficiencies over the next 2 decades. Increased investment in drinking water infrastructure is needed to ensure customers have better access to safe and reliable water supply for future generations. ASCE is proposing the following to raise the grade in drinking water. Expand and strengthen the Safe Drinking Water Loan Program, increase principal forgiveness and private lead service line funding and opportunities, and streamline and reduce federal requirements to encourage participation. Encourage utilities to investigate water conservation and efficiency measures, including implementing uniform or increasing block rate structures and performing water audits. Adopt innovative technologies to improve maintenance, reduce water loss, and enhance productivity and reduce life cycle costs. Encourage, incentivize, or require water utilities to develop risk-based pipeline prioritization and asset management programs. Ensure that water rates cover the full cost of service, including operation and maintenance and long-term replacement needs. Recommend that utilities evaluate cash funding annual main replacements using an expense depreciation mechanism. Energy. Wisconsin's utilities provide energy to commercial, industrial, and residential ratepayers throughout the state. The mix of electrical power generation continues to evolve with new gas-fired plants, wind power, and utility-scale solar power compensating for the retirement of coal-powered plants. In general, Wisconsin's energy needs will be met through 2024. Energy shortages are unlikely, but would occur if plans for additional transmission and generation needs are not fulfilled in the future. Rate increases are common in Wisconsin, and the current average retail electricity rate was 10.58 cents per kilowatt hour, higher than the Midwest and national averages. However, this additional funding is directed towards needed capital projects for generation, distribution, and transmission. Utilities and government agencies are working to develop consensus greenhouse gas emission goals and the required infrastructure to attain them. Plans for power generation must consider future demand as well as public concern for the environment. Wisconsin must continue to pursue a strong energy policy that serves economic needs and preserves the environment. We propose the following to raise the grade in energy. Continue to reduce greenhouse gas production through conservation, renewables, nuclear, and lower CO2 producing fuels like natural gas. Continue to research and develop clean coal, energy storage, and carbon capture technologies. Continue to broaden the diversity of future fuel sources. work with all stakeholders to create a workable 2050 plan for greenhouse gas reductions, including commitments to defined milestone objectives along the way. Increase diligence and preparedness to avert and recover from potential cyber attacks. Improve the reliability and redundancy of system controls and communication, along with blocking of directed cyber intrusions. Assure the reliability of imported energy supplies contractually and by transmission reliability and redundancy. Support transportation fuel efficiency by improving electrical vehicle charging convenience and providing incentives for efficient vehicles. Add renewable electric generation and modernize existing generation plants. Ensure that energy efficiency, conservation, and renewable energy are attractive, economically viable alternatives for Wisconsin's energy needs. Improve transmission and distribution infrastructure to support the changes in generation sources and increasing demands. Harden the transmission and distribution infrastructure to combat extreme weather events. Increase the funding of Focus on Energy to take advantage of the proven savings from the program. Wisconsin has been a leader in hazardous waste cleanup, brownfields, and emerging contaminant issues. The partnership between the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources and the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency ensures cleanup of contamination from hazardous waste and polychlorinated biphenyl through the One Cleanup program. Of the EPA's 1,178 National Priority List, or NPL sites, 36 of them, 3.1%, are in Wisconsin. More than 3/4 of those sites, about 28, are currently progressing toward being delisted. The state of Wisconsin has been proactive to protect and preserve the environment from hazardous waste. Establishing and maintaining funding, along with prioritizing sites with the highest risk to the health and safety of the public, are the primary concerns regarding hazardous waste sites in Wisconsin. ASCE supports the following recommendations to raise the grade. Provide responsible parties access to funds to support cleanup at contaminated sites based on a suite of factors such as financial need, records of operation and maintenance, and risk prioritization. Look for additional resources to decrease the backlog claims for the Dry Cleaner Environmental Response Fund. Establish a process to identify sites with the highest risk, to prioritize remedial action and guide that level of response. Increase funding for state-led sites. Establish the State Trust Fund as a mechanism from which to fund loans for brownfields projects. And implement the 2015 recommendations of the Brownfield Study Group. Inland waterways consist of the navigation channels and associated structures that support commercial transport of materials between ports, terminals, and other locations. The major inland waterway in Wisconsin is the Mississippi River, consisting of 213 miles of navigation channels. In 2017, 25.8 million tons of cargo was transported over barges on this freight highway, consisting primarily of iron ore, steel scraps, and food products. Wisconsin's locks and dams along the inland waterways are beyond the intended and their design life. Targeted funding allowing component replacement has kept the locks and dams functional for the time being. However, increased frequency of scheduled and unscheduled maintenance has contributed to decreased system performance, and major rehabilitation of these structures is needed to ensure long-term durability. Since 2011, the percentage of vessels experiencing delay has increased from 6% to 35%, and the average delay per lockage has increased from 20 minutes to 70 minutes. Fortunately, additional revenue sources, including public-private partnerships, are being considered to support investments to inland waterway infrastructure in Wisconsin. we recommend the following to raise the grade. Fund waterway projects to the authorized levels and do so consistently. Develop and implement a standardized measurement for delays on the system. Consider using the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers contract authority for projects and some other appropriate mechanism to avoid the stop and start of construction currently happening because of the appropriations process. Ensure full utilization of the Inland Waterways Trust Fund by providing matching federal appropriations and increase the funding of operations and maintenance of the inland waterways each year. Utilize alternative financing and delivery methods, such as public-private partnerships, when appropriate. Wisconsin's port facilities range from simple harbors to multimodal distribution hubs with transport using Great Lakes, rivers, roads, rail, and air routes. Wisconsin is home to 20 harbors, including 8 major ports, including the shared Superior, Wisconsin, Duluth, Minnesota port. The ports of Wisconsin support approximately 10,000 jobs and generate more than $1.6 billion annually in economic activity. The overall condition of Wisconsin's major ports is adequate for the demands currently placed on the state, but facilities will require adequate funding to install, replace, or maintain safe infrastructure. ASCE supports the following to raise the grade. Update general port infrastructure to meet the demands of extreme water levels. Increase multimodal options to the ports, particularly access for land transportation, including but not limited to rail and road transportation. Work to complete dredging activities, including contaminated sediment dredging, to ensure the port is not limited in growth or in periods of low water levels. Prepare for ports, harbors, and inland waterways to accommodate the newest generation of ships, particularly as more smart features are developed. Enhance Wisconsin's utilization of federal grant programs, such as the Infrastructure for Rebuilding America, or INFRA, better utilizing investments to leverage development, or build fund, and the Harbor Maintenance Trust Fund. Streamline the project permitting process for port infrastructure improvements. Wisconsin encompasses more than 115,000 miles of drivable roadways. About 14,000 miles of those roadways are interstate and state highways. More than 1/3 of these roads are in fair or below condition, and deterioration is likely to continue over the next 10 years. If additional funding is not provided, 50% of the roads may experience increasing pavements rated at poor or below. More than 2/3 of major roads concentrated in urban areas were rated as fair or below in roadway condition. Deficient roads cost drivers $6 billion annually due to wear and tear on vehicles, wasted fuel due to congestion, and the overall cost of crashes on highways. There is an estimated $13 billion shortfall over the next decade if roadway improvements are not funded. Roadway features in Wisconsin are likely a contributing factor in approximately 1/3 of fatal traffic crashes. This is tremendously significant to drivers on rural roadways throughout the state, where the fatality rate doubles the national average. We support the following to raise the grade on roads. Make needed geometric repairs, create sufficient clear zones, and update traffic operations where needed to improve the safety of the state's roadways and reduce congestion. Create an integrated multimodal transportation system, especially in urban areas, to help improve congestion and provide more transportation opportunities. Enact many of the funding recommendations provided in the 2013 by the Wisconsin Transportation Finance and Policy Commission to bring about increased investment in infrastructure funding. Increase the federal government investment while pursuing a more efficient and sustainable funding system at the state level. Develop a more balanced maintenance, rehabilitation, and reconstruction approach to the state's roadways to provide the optimum cost-effective life for pavement structures. Wisconsin's maintenance spending per mile is relatively low, while capital and administrative spending per lane mile is quite high. Solid waste. Municipal solid waste is generated by Wisconsin households, businesses, and other institutions. The amount of municipal solid waste generated per person in Wisconsin is consistent with the national average rate of approximately 5 pounds per person per day. The predominant method for managing municipal solid waste in the state is landfilling. Landfills generally have sufficient capacity and are in good condition, a result of robust state regulatory oversight. Combined recycling and composting rates in the state are comparable to national averages at approximately 1/3 of waste generated. Recycling programs rely on revenue from the sale of recyclables, prices of which are driven by volatile international markets that are currently at historically low values. Recycling rates have stagnated in recent years, and municipal recycling programs could benefit from increased state funding. A balance between economic, social, and environmental impacts is needed for all solid waste management efforts to succeed in the future. ASCE supports the following to raise the grade. The complex and diverse nature of waste generators, and waste management options, coupled with a mixture of public and private involvement, presents significant challenges to gathering reliable data. Wisconsin should increase efforts to collect, analyze, and openly distribute key municipal solid waste statistics, such as waste generated per person, recycling as a percentage of waste generated, and waste disposition, in other words, percentage that is landfilled, recycled, composted, or combusted, following the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency facts and figures approach. This data is needed to educate the public, track progress, and shape future decisions. Municipal and county recycling grant appropriation funding levels should be increased. Waste reduction efforts by all generators, residential, commercial, institutional, and industrial, will result in less stress on the overall infrastructure and less impact on the environment. Reduction is at the top of the waste management hierarchy. Let's face it, if waste is not generated, it does not require management. Combined recycling and composting rates in the state have stagnated for several years at an estimated rate of approximately 1/3 of total waste generated, which is consistent with national averages. Continued efforts to increase the collection efficiency of recyclable materials, especially those with the higher market values such as aluminum containers and numbers 1 and 2 plastics, and to avoid landfilling such materials will provide many benefits. The estimated value of disposed, that is non-recyclables, exceeds $100 million annually. It is estimated that less than 1/2 of the many easily recyclable items, such as aluminum cans, plastic bottles, and steel cans, are actually recycled. The establishment of state and/or local recycling goals is encouraged. Solid waste management infrastructure is largely market-driven. As such, decisions are most often made on an economic basis. Increasingly, the desire for sustainable solutions requires an evaluation of economic, environmental, and social impacts, often termed the triple bottom line. A balance among these three factors is needed to proceed with sustainable solid waste management in the future. Stormwater runoff and the subsequent effect of its volume, intensity, and associated pollutant loading continues to challenge Wisconsinites and our way of life. Wisconsin is home to 15,000 inland lakes and impoundments, 53,000 streams, about 200 miles of boundaries on the Mississippi River, nearly 2,700 miles of trout streams, and more than 1,000 miles of Great Lakes coastline, including 192 coast beach miles. The quality of these natural resources depends in large part on the state's stormwater infrastructure. Presently, 120 Wisconsin municipalities have implemented stormwater utilities to fund their local stormwater programs. Annual utilities generally collect between $10 and $150 per year on average from single-family homes, with the average payment being approximately $60 per year. Bolstering funding levels of these municipal stormwater utilities is also key to improving our grade. Adequate funding through utilities, grants, and other programs, and effective use of those funds is critical towards success of all systems. Additionally, the state should closely rate and monitor the condition of natural waterways and utilize data and research to budget effectively and efficiently. We recommend the following to raise the stormwater grade. Bolster the funding level of municipal stormwater utilities to allow for more sustainable management of our regional best management practices, or BMPs, total maximum daily load studies, and municipal separate storm sewer system reports. Garner data and quantify current budget utilization and forecast for future needs. Raise public awareness of the impacts on stormwater through de-icing, downspout disconnection, and other avenues to improve quality and quantity of our runoff. Efficient transit service is a major component of a multimodal transportation system and a key to public safety, commerce, and easing traffic congestion. In Wisconsin, transit takes on many forms ranging from urban fixed-route bus transit systems to rural taxi service. For many, that means alternative means of transportation to work, school, and recreation, filling a critical transportation need for transit-dependent people. Unfortunately, funding challenges from federal, state, and local entities present public transit systems in Wisconsin with tremendous financial burdens to overcome. ASCE supports the following to raise the grade. Provide an increased dedicated source of funds from the state to defray local transit operating costs. Create regional transit authorities to overcome barriers through multi-jurisdictional transit service areas. Reauthorization of the Federal Surface Transportation Program, including fixing the Highway Trust Fund to provide a stable source of federal funds. Incorporate transit initiatives into land use and transportation planning, including larger service areas, maximized accessibility, and linkages between jobs and supporting workforces. Include high-speed bus and rail corridors and other transit travel time enhancements in transportation to help make transit the travel mode of choice and to reduce congestion and improve safety in primary travel corridors. Wastewater. Wisconsin's municipal utilities are facing challenges due to aging infrastructure, growth, and new wastewater discharge regulations. The estimated future needs for municipal wastewater infrastructure maintenance and upgrades for Wisconsin total $6.3 billion. Utilities are raising rates to cover necessary costs and to combat dwindling grant funding. In Wisconsin, the average annual rate increase of nearly 5% is higher than the national average. However, the true cost of service is often still not reflected in raised rates. The highest rate increases occur in small rural communities of 1,000 to 2,000 residents. Meanwhile, approximately 25% of Wisconsin residents do not have access to sanitary sewers, mainly relying on on-site septic or other treatment options. Municipalities and wastewater utilities will face significant capital costs to meet new phosphorus level quality impacts for lakes, reservoirs, rivers, and streams. Collection and treatment systems are seeing the impacts of increased inflow and infiltration from more intense and frequent storm events due to climate change. Anticipated new regulatory requirements for previously undiscovered compounds like per and polyfluoral substances, or PFAS, the forever chemicals, will also add to the financial burden on wastewater treatment facilities and taxpayers. We're recommending the following to raise the grade in wastewater. Ongoing monitoring and planning are required to maintain or achieve sustainable collection systems. Impacts and costs of microconstituents such as PFAS are currently unknown. Advocacy efforts should focus on national standards, source reduction efforts, funding for new research on new technology, and phased implementation to reduce the financial burden on wastewater treatment facilities and ratepayers. Continue to support innovative approaches and regional solutions for meeting permit compliance. Permit holders may incur significant capital and operation expenses to achieve the water quality-based effluent criteria for phosphorus and microconstituents which are at the practical levels of current technology. Planning is necessary for the physical activities and financial needs for achieving these limits. The potential impacts of climate change, such as infiltration and inflow, may impact collection systems such that future capacity will be more difficult to predict and costly to address. Support efforts for public outreach on the value of water and wastewater services and provide incentives for source reduction. Utility rates should cover the full cost of service, including operation, maintenance, and capital needs. And as you can see, Wisconsin's infrastructure still needs some attention. But however, you are now equipped, hopefully, to speak on each of the core areas of Wisconsin's infrastructure. For the access to the complete Wisconsin 2020 Infrastructure Report Card, please visit infrastructurereportcard.org as shown on the slide. Next, I'll give a quick review of the bipartisan infrastructure law that is the result of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act that was passed last November. This program will provide federal funding for several areas of infrastructure and will be distributed through state agencies. In Wisconsin, the currently identified state agencies are the Department of Natural Resources and the Department of Transportation. This slide depicts the current funding in various infrastructure categories in Wisconsin, either enumerated within the bipartisan infrastructure law or what would occur under the present federal funding formulas. As you can see, aviation is $198 million over 5 years, and this is in addition to what the state would be funding. Bridges is $40 billion over 5 years. Broadband is a minimum of $100 million. Roads, $5.5 billion over 5 years. Transit, $592 million over 5 years. Wastewater, $80 million annually for 5 years. And water is $1.7 billion over 5 years. In addition, the bipartisan infrastructure law is also slated to distribute the following funds to Wisconsin. Cyber attacks, $18 million over 5 years. Electric vehicle charging, $79 million over 5 years. Weatherization, $70 million over 5 years. And wildfires, $20 million over 5 years. So with that, I'd like to thank you all for your time and attention. I realize I've provided a lot of information for you to digest in a very short period of time. And I guess at this time, I'll attempt to answer any questions you might have on this. Thank you.
I'm a little curious about the relationship between the ACSE and all these state agencies that, you know, administer the funds and do the work. Is there a really good collegial relationship? Do they accept and welcome your report card, for example? Or is there tension, or, is there just a lot of resistance? How hard is this going to be?
Well, it's an excellent question. We met with every state agency that handles all of these things, and we got their concurrence prior to publishing the report card. I can say that wasn't always true in the past. We definitely had kickback, And, but I think that the agencies themselves understand the need for improved infrastructure, realizing that it's an investment. It's an investment in the future of Wisconsin. If we improve the transportation, that improves, it doesn't just improve the transportation for me and you, it improves it for everyone moving goods along the highways, roads. So, yeah, we do have, I think we've got buy-in, at least they said we do.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I wanted to thank you for this amazing presentation. And my question is, have you presented it, just as you did to us today, to the Senate and the Assembly?
We have not presented it to the Senate and Assembly. We have met with the various, yes, the different committees. Like say if we were doing aviation, we would meet with that subcommittee and go over it with them. If it was ports, we would go over it with them. As a matter of fact, ports and inland waterways, a lot of that is U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. We met with them and got their concurrence on it. So we've tried to meet with anyone, any of the state agencies or even federal agencies that have some say in the way that funds get distributed and used.
Do you think there's any chance to have a half hour like you just took to present to those two bodies? I mean, unless they see it as a total whole, I can't imagine them voting in favor of things that need to be done. And so I think seeing that whole picture might make them more realize the issue.
Well, we have met with individual assemblymen
Right.
and individual senators. We haven't done a full presentation in front of like a joint meeting of them or either side, to tell you the truth. We've tried, but just haven't been able to come up with anything right now. But yeah, we have a group of us that are available to meet with them and discuss with them and give them our thoughts, give them our recommendations. Not that they have to take them, but we,
Right.
yeah. Yes, sir.
Thank you too for this presentation. And I'm not sure how to phrase or how to ask this question, but I'm curious about the distribution of all of these assets and liabilities and problems, both urban, rural, higher income communities, lower income communities. I mean, how is this stuff distributed across the state? It's not just uniform.
No, it
And
is.
how do we solve that problem?
Well, if the problem is that you think an inordinate amount is going to a particular area, in that case, most of that's through the politicians. And although we will identify it, we don't necessarily say, take X percentage of this particular fund and send it to, say, smaller communities or rural areas or urban areas for that fact. We just say, these are the problems that we see from our evaluation of all the data we've been able to access. And this is the amount of money. Now, you're going to have to decide how to do that. Because let's face it, I think every one of these numbers that we have shown here probably will not be matched by our legislature. So something is going to have to, they're going to have to prioritize projects. Our philosophy has always been, through ASCE, we always say, do the projects right, but also do the right projects. If you do a project, if you make a 6-lane highway out in the middle of nowhere, it's really not doing anyone any good. It's just, well, it's making some contractor happy, I guess.
That's who they listen to, though.
Most of these problems are in lower income parts of the state, and they are expected to pay to solve the problem. They don't have the political clout or the resources to solve the problem.
You mean as far as,
Well, just take lead pipes.
oh yeah, good example.
That's a good example that popped out of my head.
Yeah.
There's probably better ones, but that's not a problem in Egg Harbor.
No, because you have a pretty
Exactly.
new system.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I know that like last year, I believe that the EPA actually gave, prior to this happening, the EPA gave quite a bit of money to Milwaukee to replace most of their lead services, which is great, because lead service is definitely a safety issue. I mean, it's been proven time and again.
Thank you.
Oh, yes, sir.
What would you say would be the best way that League of Women Voters of Door County can help you?
The league, you've got to do some political, political advocacy. Is really it. That's what's happened with the others that we
How
have
would you
given.
help us do that?
You know, a lot of what we've done in the past is we provided the information to the league, and in some cases, they have met with the politicians. In some cases, we've met with the politicians. We have several of our members are also members of some of these groups that I talked about, you know, brownfields committees and stuff like that. You know, the state agencies will actually go out and they'll say, okay, you're an expert in this. Will you come be part of a blue ribbon panel and put together a report on this? So we've got people, we basically had someone for every one of these, someone on the committees reviewing it and making recommendations. So
So spread the word, spread the right
spread the word, definitely spread the word. You know. Yes.
The federal money coming in, does that go through the executive, the governors? Or does it go through the legislature?
The federal money coming in is being designated by the legislature to go to certain departments. Like I said, the Department of Transportation. So they are handling, the Department of Transportation is handling, I think, everything with aviation, bridges, roads, and transit. I think they're handling all that. But there are funding formulas that have been put together by the feds that Wisconsin signed on to long ago. So some of the numbers that I presented here today are coming from the funding formulas based on the feds saying, we're gonna give you X amount of dollars. So we just took that and spread it out over what they had.
Curious, does the governor's office, who's over there, oversee this money's going to this department, or does the legislature have to sign off on? I'm ignorant on the politics
I
here.
think-
Who controls the money?
I think it goes through the governor and it gets distributed to the
Agency or whatever.
different agencies. So it goes governor, legislature, departments. Yes.
Hi, you asked about, when you started, or you thanked the League of Women Voters for asking, many places you've made presentations like this, or parts of the ASCE has made presentations. And I got a suggestion, and I'm writing it down to take it back. I live in Illinois now, I'm a former member here. If you could provide questions that we could ask when we have candidate forums, what would you like to see as a good question? We would still have to have our panel that makes sure that it's a nonpartisan question. But if you had questions that you would like to have us address to candidates when we have forums, please submit questions.
Well,
You should have a battery, a list of questions saying, what are you gonna do about this in view of what that person's position may be when they get elected?
Yeah, and you know, I'm glad you brought that up because just recently in our area, the League of Women Voters of Appleton had forums because many of our races were being contested. And they had infrastructure questions on there.
Yeah,
as
but
part
I
of-
mean, you're experts on the correct question to ask, and you could make the question narrow, and, I just think it would be great to have some professional questions, some really solid questions.
Maybe you could
And
put them
we
on
can-
your website that people can
Yeah.
access.
I was going to
people
say,
decide.
I can certainly provide that to you. I think what I would like to do is actually go back to the individual authors of the particular, say if you had a question, say roads. Everyone knows roads. So if I have question, if there are questions about roads that are particular to this, to Door County,
Yeah, for instance, the candidates in Door County are on these committees.
Yes.
What, in your committees, you have roads, you have ports, you have water. We could pick from your list of questions and say, these are good questions to ask our candidates because they're on these committees.
we can certainly do that. We worked with, like I said, we worked with the league at the state level, the League of Wisconsin. And I worked with Carol Diggleman a lot. And we came up with some questions that I know they were using
That's-
in Milwaukee County
Good.
and in Dane County.
And I'm gonna
For-
take
for
this
some
back
of
to
their
Illinois
things.
for our forums too, because I know there's an ASCE in Illinois.
That's a good.
Yes, as a matter of fact, ASCE Illinois just released a report card within the last few
Great,
weeks.
I'll look for it.
Darren Olson is the guy's name.
Thank you.
Yes.
If we talk about ways that we as a league can support these efforts, can we call you? Do you have some
Absolutely.
other contact person that we could call for more information?
You could call me. You could also go on the ASC Wisconsin website. We have a report card committee that's listed there. It should have everyone's email address. I was the one, just so you know, this report was put together by about 35 volunteer civil engineers.
Oh, good.
I was in charge. I didn't do any of the actual writing of the reports themselves. But I reviewed all of them before they went to our national society for the final review and sign off. So I had a committee going on that. But all the people that are listed on that 2020 report card committee should be listed on our website and can be accessed. And you can call me, you can email me. You know, Sandy knows, you can email me. It might take me a while to get back, but you can email me.
Thank
Be
you.
more than happy to help, yes.
So are all the states then rated on that website that you just mentioned?
On the website I just mentioned, no, it's just
No.
Wisconsin. But
Okay.
if you go to infrastructure report card,
Uh-huh,
almost all states have done an infrastructure report card now. And
okay,
you can get all of them. It will list the states that have them. So if you want to look up, say, Maine,
uh-huh.
you can look it up and see what they rated.
What they did.
Or I'm trying to think of some other ones that just recently came out, I think,
I can check it out, thank
Yeah.
you. Yeah.
quite a few of them. So, yes, ma'am.
So if I remember this correctly, Transit got a D+,
Yes.
and yet the amount of money was $594 million recommended. It seems like a small amount for the breadth of the need in the state.
I would agree with that. I think if you talk directly with the person who is in charge of that particular review, he would agree with you, saying that it is grossly underfunded. He's been pushing, he's from the Milwaukee area, let me tell you that. And he's been pushing, especially in the big cities. I mean, the only mass transit we have in the cities is busing. We don't really have multimodal. We have busing. And so you're going to get people along those routes. That's gonna be it.
And so it may also be reflective of the two people who asked up there about, you know, how does this get allocated in districts,
Yeah.
legislative districts across the state. So you have the two three largest populations who need this desperately, and yet there's the least amount of money being provided to meet that need. Do I understand it?
I would agree with that, and, you know, just from my personal point of view, I would say a lot of it is because, unfortunately, the people using mass transit are probably the lower income people. And so, you know, kind of like the squeaky wheel gets the grease, kind of falls into that category. That's what I would say. I mean, we passed up an opportunity a few years ago for
For the
rail.
trains? Yeah.
We did.
It was
Gave them money back.
And we had to pay
The governor
the
last
country of Spain $2 million.
Yes. Yes.
I just just wondering if you could speak at all in general to where Wisconsin falls with their report card compared to some of the other states. I'm sure you've seen some of the other.
Yes, I have seen quite a few of the others, and I would say that we're probably in the upper half as far as our grade is concerned. Wisconsin overall, even though we grade out of the C, some of our infrastructure, like the solid waste, this example, is pretty robust, you know, because it's something we've been doing for a long time. Drinking water, wastewater, stuff like that, overall is pretty good, but especially drinking water and wastewater. With the new contaminants out there that have to be addressed, and we don't know what those rules are gonna be right now. We don't know how much is going to be allowed to go from a treatment plant, for example, into an impoundment, lake, river, whatever the case may be. So how do we gauge that? How do we put a number to it? It's a very vague calculation, but we did our best on it, is what we did. Yes.
The funding numbers you put up there were, that came down from the federal, I mean, they put the whatever their math was, they put the percentage of this is gonna go to transit, this will go to the water. The state hasn't played with those, hasn't set those numbers, those that came down from the federal government.
Okay, there were two different ways it happened. Each of the states was given a number, an amount that was going to be funded by the feds. They decided that in
Totally.
Washington. Some of the categories that are shown here, they actually said, okay, we will give the state of Wisconsin X amount for wastewater. And some, like the roads, for example, they said, we are going to give the state of Wisconsin this much money total. Well, based on previous funding formulas that we had, the state of Wisconsin, from the feds, that came out to the amount of money that I showed you. And keep in mind that the numbers I showed are just the federal component, not the state component, just the federal that's coming as part of this, what we call the BIL. And none of these projects will probably happen until later this year, I mean like fall. I did happen to see in the news just the other day that the federal government has stated they're going to try to streamline the process, the review process, which would be a great savings to every state. You know, because if the feds give you money, they want you to document how you're using it, what you're doing, but the permitting process in some, especially when it came to rivers, could be completely cumbersome.
Is the money you were talking about that came from the feds, that's a separate pot from this ARPA money that's also coming in to the state?
Separate pot, yes. ARPA was like the front end of, you know, kind of came out of the whole COVID thing.
Mhm.
And then this was actually just for infrastructure
Specific.
and, you know, came out from that. Any other questions?
You may or may not know this, the federal bill was bipartisan. Both sides had multiple people voting for this. Was it Democrats had 2 votes? Or, I'm just curious what the balance was. It was truly bipartisan or a couple of people from the other side?
Well, I'd say it's more the latter. The Democrats almost, I think all Democrats voted for it, and a few Republicans voted for
There
it.
wasn't a single Republican from our state that voted for it.
That I can believe, because I know I spoke with the one for this area, and he told me he wasn't gonna vote for it.
No,
Because-
not a single.
Because he said that, he told me that, well, the rules, you know, everything you have to go through, the rules are very cumbersome. And I reminded him that he was, you know, he was there back when the Republican Party had the presidency and both houses of Congress. I said, you could have changed it right then. That's just me.
And I think it's fair to say probably that none of these report cards were available to the feds. In other words, they didn't make up their amounts based on information like this.
Well,
Is that fair?
they had
They
this
did.
available.
Okay,
Our group has, national, the society level
so we
ASCE
hope they.
has met with Congress many times
Okay,
and met
good.
with many of the various constituent committees on it and made their presentations. So yes, this information was available. We've made a concerted effort to be in front of all congressmen. We do what we call a fly-in every year. We try to make sure that every state is represented and every district is represented to meet with our representative and senator. So, not sure it works, but we try. Okay. Well, thank you very much.
I think there are a lot of brains clicking with what we learned today. Thank you for coming today. Thank you for being associated with the league, however that may be. Now please go out and enjoy this Door County afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you.